Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer for June 4th, 2020. I have the pleasure of having Saroosh Khan here on the podcast this afternoon, and talking about how to design an SEO strategy while still remaining relevant. And certainly there's different tools out there that help us kind of optimize our web pages. But just because we're optimizing a web page doesn't mean that we really have to optimize the page essentially for the users and and have our content be a little bit different. And Saroosh is going to kind of help explain the difference between using and understanding sentiment and when we're creating content for SEO. So Saroosh, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do, and how long you've been doing SEO, and how long you've been in the search industry.
Okay, so I've been in the search industry for about 4.5 years, but I've been actually actively doing SEO for last 3 years. I recently started my own agency as Get Known Inc., which tackles clients in the law and legal niche only. So I'm also still yet a student at IBA Karachi and a student of BS Accounting and Finance.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier. I was talking earlier about about creating a web page and optimizing a page. And sure, we start with keywords, but how do we determine what the user intent is? And I like to use the example of actually going to finding a keyword and going to Google and typing in the keyword and kind of looking at the results, and seeing what type of content is there. But what is your process for you may have a keywords, but do you still do keyword research, and what do you do after you do that keyword research?
Yeah, so normally your keyword research process is just about similar to what every agency would be doing. We usually, go about the kind of terms people talk more about, the kind of terms people search about and stuff like that. But it does not really end over there. It is not really, I would say, the foundation of our keyword research. It is just about the kind of content we just, those keywords tell us what content we want to write on. But how we would write on and how we would structure those specific pieces of content, it is, I would say, a much deeper level of understanding which we usually employ. So for example, if there is a guy in my agency who does the keyword research, he would not be just going about and looking at keywords and stuff like that. He would be looking about how those keywords are interrelated to each other, and instead of searching for keywords and looking for content, we go it, I would say, usually the reverse way. We usually read the content which is ranking better, read the content which is being shared, understand the sentiment, understand the whole scenario and the context in which a user might be searching, and then write keywords just related to that. It does not matter if they are being searched or not. It does not really matter if people are the trends are high or not. But if we want to be relevant to what to the whole scenario from which a user is searching, you have to target those specific queries as well. And I would say that specific thing is an extra mile we go about. Sorry for that bike. That specific I would say uh, understanding the sentiment and also researching about that is an extra mile we usually go about, which actually differs our strategy from other people in the search, because everybody here knows what on page is, how on page is done, how to optimize content, but it's only at the textual level. People don't really dig into the pragmatic level analysis and understand that in various structures in pieces of content, how different entities might be related. They are like, okay, this page has this much entity mentioned 45 times, this entity mentioned 50 times, this specific word mentioned 15 times, but they don't really understand that where exactly in the whole piece of content is those keywords mentioned, how and actually a user starts reading from the top, and by the end of the piece of content, how his understanding of the topic, how his sentimentally interconnecting with that topic or not. If he is actually interconnecting with the topic in a way he wants to, it's like it's marvelous, it's the best thing and as you can do. But if he's not, it does not matter if you're ranking first or you got 10 spots on the first page, because the user won't really convert, which is the ultimate goal. And when the user won't convert, a lot of users like that will form the user interaction data Google would be looking at and would be updating. So in the next few days when you would be like, oh, this update came and my website tanked down, I don't know why. You have to know why, because your content really sucks at interacting with the user the right way. Updates don't really come out of the blue. They're always based on data, and that data is always coming from how user interact from the content we write. I have always believed it that search engines, their algorithms, they are coded by software engineers at Google, but their bases are actually made by us. The content we write, the content we interact with, and all the data we provide Google. This is how they build their algorithms, on the basis of all the data we provide them. So in order to be really good at what we do as SEO, we have to understand the whole scenario and the context in which a searcher is doing a specific search.
Yeah, so it's more about making your particular page, your page needs to be more relevant than another page on the internet for that particular, keyword or search. And that, and the same thing with, and it does start with a title tag, but because that's what the user sees in the search results, they click, and if you don't have that that relevant content that they're looking for, they will hit the back button and go to another page, or another website.
Exactly. So actually, we were having a chat and traffic think tank today, and you actually might have noticed that Google, if somebody does a conversational kind of search, the Google sometimes highlights the specific answer for that search. It's very recent.
Yes.
It's been happening for about 3-4 days, but
Yeah.
that is where structuring your content comes into place. Structuring your content on the basis of how there are various touch points in user journey. For example, if I am to hire a law firm for a case, I won't just go on the first page and hire that firm. I would have made up my mind about the specific things I would need to talk about. But it's not always that I would be doing a search like personal injury law firm in San Francisco. My search can be even more conversational. For example, if I'm somebody who is not able to afford a lot of fee in terms of a law firm and stuff like that, so I won't be typing that kind of search. I would be typing like how much are the costs and stuff like that, and in that specific case Google will actually take me to that specific part, especially if I'm searching from mobile, that specific part on the content which talks about cost. But
Yep.
if a user is actually interacting the first time with your content at a specific point, which is, I would say, more than halfway down your path of user journey you want them to interact to, it is of no use, because it would be take a look at the cost and stuff, would go back, it won't be that much. I would say the user won't be able to understand the whole sentiment you're trying to build around that content, which is why it is very important to structure your content in a way that is the exact same way a user sentiment would flow. For example, if you want to rank for any specific term which is just relevant to the basics and expands on that, you don't need to have that term in an FAQ section at the end of the page. It should be right up there, right after the basics. So for example, if somebody searched for them, you would know that, okay, the person understands the basic stuff and needs to build on that. But when he actually reads that specific highlighted part, the next content that comes after that would be sentimentally very relevant, instead of, just being another H2 and content and, text and stuff. So this is where understanding the context becomes even more important, and I can foresee it will become more and more important, because the kind of lives we are living in, we don't have really a time to, give 4, 5, 6 minutes to a specific page. We want things that are readily available to us, and even search engines are looking for options that make such stuff readily available. We talk about feature snippets, how people rank in feature snippets. You will never see a feature snippet for a competitive terms which is usually stuffed by every keyword and stuff like that. You will always see a feature snippet is something which is more easy on the eye. If you read, it would give you very valuable information which connects. It won't be just, a line of a sentence stuffed by keywords and all those things we usually understand in terms of text only. It would be contextually way more relevant than all the other pages. So the goal is to be, I would say, your website, your web page should be a very firm handshake with your client or with your reader. And if it is a good handshake, the reader won't go anywhere. But if it is not, you will obviously face the consequences.
Yeah, so you kind of think about, the user journey even on that web page. So they hit your web page, they click on your page, they get some information, but then if you have some follow-up questions or follow-up answers or something that will get them to go to the next step, and not have to click, for example, if they were looking for something related, to hiring an attorney. Well, it could, conclude certain information, but then afterwards, towards maybe the bottom of the page, or there's other content that you can include that would keep them on the page a little bit longer. That what would be very relevant to what the original, query is. And we talk about just about, it's not just stuffing the keywords there and having them, but it does need to be very relevant. With featured snippets, I like to make sure that the page is very appealing, but as well as it is, has the right markup and the right, things like bulleted lists and tables, and make it a little bit more easier on the eye to read, and have that, the information that they're looking for. I do like to look at the search query, and then I've been looking with my keyword research, that I start with. I might start with some keywords, but then I'm actually looking at the results to look at people also asked, and those questions, the follow-up questions that are related, because that can help. That helps me, get more content ideas for the page.
Exactly. So this is how we usually go about, you know, laying the foundations of content strategy. People,
Yes.
you won't, if you are doing writing a page in a competitive niche like personal injury, there would be 50, even I would say 100 pages that would be just the same way as you, if you're not doing something
Yes.
much better, if you're not connecting to user in a more, attentive kind of way. So this is what we really observed, and we have really, I would say, implemented that. For example, we were trying all our best on a specific page to rank for a personal injury term, but the page won't really budge. It would be like, it will always stay on 21st, 20th, at most 18th. We weren't really, getting into the top 10 terms, top 10 search results. So what we did is we actually read all the content of the top 10, 15 pages that were ranking. And we actually understood that all those content, they are actually kind of same, but they capitalize more on the authority. While the website we had, it was not really as authoritative because it was new, and we didn't really want to, jump in and, get all the links in the first month. So we had to do
Sure.
something. Of course, as SEO, our goal is to, show our clients some stuff, some results, improvements. So we had to, improve our results in the very start. So what we did in the very start was we actually read all the content, and we understood that all those personal injury pages regarding a specific type of accident, they were all
Yeah.
in a, I would say, very pushy. They were like, okay, we are here for you, we are defend your rights, we will do it. That
Yeah.
they were all of them were looking at something that that will happen way after the accident or the stuff that the
Yeah.
client wants to report about. They would be like, okay, you will
Sure.
get the compensation. The client does not want compensation the moment he's doing the search. He is actually searching in a context in which he's feeling a specific kind of mental and maybe financial distress. That's why he's doing that specific search. So we actually made our content a bit more attractive and appealing in that specific way. Our content was more sympathetic. We changed a bit, and instantly, by instantly, I mean in the next day when the page was recrawled and the changes were actually registered in Google, the page jumped 5 positions, which was something we
Sure.
weren't able to do for the whole month, just because we weren't really, understanding how the context is relevant. So in these kind of things, they don't really, there aren't really the foundations of your content strategy even. For example, they actually expand as your website evolves, as you move on. It actually gives you a lot of playground if you're semantically or sentimentally more, I would say in this specific example, if you're more sympathetic and you are like talking about personal injury in a sympathetic way, you can get links from, health news sites where people talk about
Yes.
how to cope with injuries, how to not fall into mental stress after a shock or stuff like that. Or
Sure.
if there is I would say, a bad happening in your life, how to, move out of distress in that specific case. So these kind of things, if you start in something more than a textual manner, if you start in a sentimentally relevant way, the playground gets bigger the way as you evolve, as your strategies implemented. So this is why it's not really only about keyword research, a way of keyword research. It's more about, a complete perspective on being relevant.
Yes, and being relevant to the actual time that that particular person does the search. Provide the right answer, provide the right at the right time, for and be semantically relevant. Are there any tools that we can use um, to measure sentiment, or to run, put a you know any tools that you recommend?
Okay, so there aren't really absolute kind of tools which will, pick up sentiments like, hey, here's your sentiment score
Sure.
from 10. But there
Yes.
are a few tools that actually, like, Surfer has a very good NLP sentiment kind of thing they offer, in which they,
Okay.
tell which NLP entities are sentimentally positive or negative. And you have to, but again, that is this data. While implementing, you have to make sure that your web page is a sentimentally relevant mix of all those entities. You can't always be talking about, hey, we are going to get you 10 million, but you have to be, more sympathetic, because everything is over there.
Sure.
You have to pick the right things in the right manner. There is another also audience intelligence tool, Sparktoro, which I sometimes use depending on my use, or I would say
Yep.
my interest. It is not something I very actively use because of the niche I'm in, but Sparktoro has got a very good way of, explaining the way your audience and the trends and their levels of the way of thinking is. For example,
Okay.
if I'm trying to reach out to law firms or lawyers. I could, go up to Sparktoro, plug in their Twitter URL to understand the kind of people they interact with, how socially active they are, what kinds of topics they're interested in, stuff like that. So it is a good tool which gives you a way more understanding of your audience, which is the first step to understand the context of the specific audience and the searcher who is doing their specific search. So these are the two tools. I haven't really tried anything else than that, but let's see.
Okay, sounds great. So we're just about out of time. So how do we get in touch with you if we want to talk a little bit more about this subject and sentiment and maybe and optimizing for relevancy? How do we get in touch with you?
Well, I'm very active on my email, so the best way to get in touch
Okay.
with me is to just write me an email. My email address is sarosh@getknownick.com. Saroosh as
Okay.
in SAROOSH.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Saroosh. This has been the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for June 4th, 2020. Thanks again, Saroosh. And we'll see you online. Thank you.
You're welcome.